Maine. Picture its rugged coast, the smell of salt air and pine needles. This land, called Dawnland by its first people, has been home to the Wabanaki tribes for over 12,000 years. Wabanaki means people of the dawn. They are a confederation of 5 nations: the Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, Passamaquoddy, Penobscot, and Abenaki. Each nation had its own territory, language, and stories, united by their deep respect for the land and its creatures. The Wabanaki believed in a world where humans and nature were interconnected.
Imagine a world without cars or supermarkets. The Wabanaki relied on their skills and the land to survive. They were masters of their environment, knowing the best places to hunt, fish, and gather plants. The men hunted deer, moose, and bear in the forests. They used bows and arrows, traps, and spears. Fishing was another vital source of food. The Wabanaki caught salmon, trout, and other fish in the rivers and along the coast. Women gathered berries, nuts, and roots. They also cultivated crops like corn, beans, and squash. This Three Sisters garden provided a stable food source. They preserved food for the winter by drying, smoking, and storing it in underground pits. The Wabanaki were also skilled craftspeople. They made everything they needed from natural materials. They wove baskets from ash splints, sewed clothing from animal hides, and carved tools from wood and bone. Their lives were a delicate dance with nature, a testament to their ingenuity and resilience. The Wabanaki were not tied to one place. They moved throughout their territory, following the seasons and the availability of food. Their homes needed to be portable and easy to build. The wigwam and the birch bark canoe were perfect solutions. Wigwams were dome-shaped structures made from a framework of saplings covered with birch bark. Birch bark is waterproof and lightweight, making it an ideal building material. Wigwams were surprisingly spacious and comfortable, providing shelter from the elements. But the birch bark canoe was perhaps the Wabanaki's most iconic creation. These lightweight and maneuverable boats allowed them to travel quickly and silently across the vast network of rivers and lakes that crisscrossed their territory. Crafted with great care and skill, the canoes were made from birch bark stretched over a frame of cedar ribs. The seams were sealed with spruce gum, making them watertight. These canoes weren't just transport, they were symbols of the Wabanaki's deep connection to the natural world. The Wabanaki world was full of spirits. They believed that everything in nature, animals, plants, rocks, even the wind, had a spirit. These spirits could help or harm, and it was important to live in balance with them. They had many stories or legends that explained the world around them. These stories, passed down through generations, taught moral lessons and helped people understand their place in the natural order. One important legend tells of Glooskap, the creator and trickster. Glooskap shaped the land, taught the people how to live, and played pranks on those who were greedy or disrespectful. The stars held special meaning for the Wabanaki. They saw constellations different from those of European cultures. Their star stories guided their travels and marked the changing seasons. The night sky wasn't just beautiful, it was a map and a calendar. Ceremonies and rituals were a vital part of Wabanaki life. They celebrated the harvest, honored the spirits, and marked important events like birth, death, and marriage. Section 5. The arrival of tall ships. The arrival of Europeans in the 16th century forever changed the lives of the Wabanaki. The first encounters were about trade. Europeans were eager for furs, especially beaver pelts, which were in high demand in Europe. The Wabanaki, in turn, were interested in European goods like metal tools, cloth, and firearms. For a time, trade brought a measure of prosperity to the Wabanaki. They exchanged furs for goods that made their lives easier. However, the arrival of European diseases like smallpox had devastating consequences. The Wabanaki had no immunity to these diseases, and entire villages were decimated by epidemics. The loss of life was staggering, weakening the Wabanaki and making them vulnerable to further encroachment. As more Europeans arrived, they sought land to establish settlements. They began to view the Wabanaki as obstacles. The relationship between the two groups, once based on trade and cautious respect, began to unravel. Section 6. Trading furs, sharing land, or so they thought. At first, many Wabanaki leaders saw the newcomers as potential allies. They entered into treaties, agreements meant to ensure peaceful coexistence. They believed these treaties were agreements to share the land, not surrender it. The Europeans, however, saw the treaties differently. They believed they were acquiring ownership of the land. This fundamental misunderstanding would have tragic consequences for the Wabanaki. As more and more Europeans arrived, competition for resources intensified. European settlers cleared forests for farmland, pushing further into Wabanaki territory. They introduced livestock that competed with native animals for food. Conflicts arose over hunting grounds, fishing rights, and land ownership. The Wabanaki found themselves caught in a clash of cultures, their traditional way of life threatened by the relentless expansion of European settlements. Section 7. Broken Promises and the Struggle to Survive. The 17th and 18th centuries were a time of great upheaval for the Wabanaki. As European colonization intensified, so did the pressure on their lands and way of life. Treaties were broken, promises were not kept, and the Wabanaki were increasingly pushed to the margins. They were caught in the middle of conflicts between the English and the French. The French and Indian War ended in a British victory, leaving the Wabanaki vulnerable. They were forced to sign new treaties that further reduced their territory. Despite facing disease, displacement, and warfare, the Wabanaki showed incredible resilience. Section 8. Keeping traditions alive through difficult times. Despite being confined to reservations and facing assimilation policies, the Wabanaki never gave up their identity. They found ways to maintain their culture and traditions, passing them down to younger generations. Grandmothers became keepers of knowledge, teaching children the old stories, songs, and dances. They kept the Wabanaki language alive, speaking it in their homes and communities. They continued to make traditional crafts, keeping alive the skills of basketry, beadwork, and wood carving. The Catholic Church played a complex role in Wabanaki life. While some priests worked to suppress traditional beliefs, others helped to preserve Wabanaki language and culture. They translated religious texts into Wabanaki languages, ensuring that the Wabanaki could understand and practice their faith in their own tongue. Despite the challenges they faced, the Wabanaki spirit endured. Their resilience, their connection to the land, and their commitment to their culture would see them through the darkest of times. Section 9. Wabanaki Basketry. A timeless art. One of the most enduring and beautiful expressions of Wabanaki culture is their basketry. For centuries, Wabanaki women have been weaving intricate baskets from brown ash splints using techniques passed down through generations. These baskets are not just beautiful objects, they are incredibly practical. They are used for gathering, storing food, carrying babies, and even for cooking. Wabanaki baskets are renowned for their strength, durability, and intricate designs. Each basket tells a story. The patterns woven into the baskets often represent elements of the natural world, like waves, trees, or animals. These designs are not merely decorative, they often hold deep cultural and spiritual significance. Today, Wabanaki basketry is experiencing a renaissance. Wabanaki artisans are keeping this ancient art form alive, teaching their skills to younger generations and selling their work in galleries and museums across the country. Section 10. Voices Rising, Recognition and Rights. The late 20th and early 21st centuries have seen a resurgence of Native American activism and a growing movement for self-determination. The Wabanaki have been at the forefront of this movement, fighting for the recognition of their sovereignty, treaty rights, and cultural heritage. In 1980, the Maine Indian Claims Settlement Act was passed, settling a long-standing land claim by the Wabanaki tribes. The settlement provided financial compensation and some degree of self-governance, but it also extinguished some Aboriginal rights. Today, the Wabanaki tribes in Maine are working to revitalize their languages, improve educational opportunities for their youth, and address issues such as poverty, healthcare, and environmental protection. They are reclaiming their history, sharing their culture with the wider world, and advocating for a more just and equitable future. Section 11. The Future of the Dawnland Shared by All. The story of the Wabanaki is a story of resilience, survival, and the enduring power of culture. It is a story that is intricately woven into the fabric of Maine's history and identity. Today, the Wabanaki tribes are working to build a better future for their people, one that honors their past while embracing the opportunities of the present. They are leaders in environmental stewardship, drawing on their ancient knowledge to protect the land and water for future generations. Their story reminds us that the history of Maine is not just a story of European settlement. It is a story of many cultures coming together, sometimes clashing, sometimes cooperating, but always shaping the identity of this place we call home. It is a story that continues to unfold, a story of hope and resilience, a story that reminds us that the future of the Dawnland is a future that we must all share.